Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, the banking industry is one of the most heavily regulated industries in the country. We'll be talking to a nationally known banking consultant next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, over the last half century, the banking industry has had several cycles of ups and downs, and I think we're in a positive mode right now. But a guy who has really seen it all since 1986 is in the studio right now, Stephen Curry. He is with Endurance Advisory. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Very nice to be here.
Yeah, well, I was in the news business in 86, and I remember that because the savings and loan crisis was happening, and it kind of sent the media into a frenzy. That was your rookie year.
That's right. That was my introduction to banking, which was quite an introduction indeed. A lot of exposure to the problems and issues that banks face that brought them down. And,
sure.
I think we all learned a lot in that period from 86 to I'd say really 92. A lot of banks failed, and I was fortunate enough to be, after we failed, acquired by a serial acquirer, NCNB, and was kind of actively involved in a lot of that merger and acquisition activity, and got to see it from all sides.
Absolutely. Well, give us the rest of the resume.
So I spent the following 20 years at what became Bank of America. It started with First Republic in Dallas, which failed spectacularly in 1989, and then NCNB after that until we acquired CNS Sovereign in Georgia, and then became Nations Bank, and we were Nations Bank up until 1998 when we acquired Bank of America. So my career took me everywhere from Dallas, Texas initially, then to Charlotte, then New York, and then Boston. When I ultimately left the bank in 2008.
Outstanding. Well, I think the fact that you've been in the banking industry so long and you've seen why banks fail helps you help your clients. We're going to pull up your website, and as we scroll down your website, talk to us about the types of banks that you like to work with.
Yeah, we work with really a variety of institutions. We've started with small investors that are looking to put together a community bank, sometimes trying to raise $10, $20 million. We've done a number of transactions, projects like that. And then we've worked all the way up to banks of about $30 million in assets. So it's a pretty broad range of banks, but I think that gives us a unique perspective on the banking industry and the challenges that it faces, and the insights that we can apply across all institutions.
Sure. And I think every child remembers playing Monopoly, and the banker was the guy who had it easy, right? The guy with the top hat. But the banking industry is very complex, isn't it?
It is. It's very heavily regulated. I say second only to the medical industry in the country. Certainly a lot of regulatory oversight, a very vast range of regulatory requirements, and a lot of those have changed dramatically in the last 20 years, and the enforcement of those regulations has also varied, and over the last 5 years really ramped up in terms of being a lot more strict and moving banks into a kind of a more sophisticated regulatory oversight model. A lot of focus on risk management now.
And when regulators come to visit, you better have your house in order. So I can understand why people hire you, because even missing some forms or missing some deadlines can get you in trouble.
Yeah, it's there is a lot of focus on risk management, liquidity management, commercial real estate, and capital management. A lot of focus on where the banks are, what challenges they're facing. They want to make sure that the bank has the right capabilities in place to face off against all of those challenges. We live in a fairly volatile world, and there's a lot of change that comes through technology as well. And so I think bank executives and management and directors all are facing a pretty tough headwind right now in the industry. So
sure. Let's talk about COVID, because everybody, they didn't have a playbook for COVID. We're all kind of making it up as we went along. I know your clients came to you with some technology issues during COVID because people were not visiting the bank.
That's right. Digital banking exploded during COVID. That both commercial and retail customers could no longer visit the branches, and so they transacted online. There was a very dramatic ramp up in digital banking capabilities at banks of all sizes, banks that heretofore had not ventured into the digital realm, made the decision as rapidly as possible to scale up and get online. So, we helped a number of institutions as well as a startup in that area during the COVID times. So.
Well, I know a couple of years ago there was that Silicon Bank that made international headlines, and it caused some fear to enter the market. But then that quickly went away. How would you describe the health of the industry right now?
I think it's still challenged. It really depends upon the institution and their relative position. The competition for deposits has increased dramatically, and thus liquidity management on the other side of the balance sheet becomes a lot more challenging as well. So, a lot of institutions took in a great deal of cash during the COVID period. The Federal Reserve pumped a lot of stimulus into the money supply, and since then, they've been working to take that out, and as a consequence, deposits have contracted, liquidity has contracted. It places a lot more pressure on banks, which grew pretty rapidly during those years and expanded their balance sheet. Supporting that becomes a lot more difficult. So,
and what happens when the Fed starts lowering rates again? Is that a good thing or a bad thing for the banking industry?
Well, the biggest challenge we've had is the rapid increase in rates. That's put a lot of bank balance sheets upside down. Most banks carry a fairly large treasury portfolio, and some banks went longer out on the maturity curve in order to improve their earnings. And once rates went up, that put a lot of those securities underwater. So it's really quite astounding how many banks technically have negative equity if you look at the capital levels net of unrealized losses on their bond portfolios.
And when the Fed starts lowering rates, does that give a little bit more breathing room?
That will help, but rates would have to go down quite a bit in order to take that pressure off. As you recall, back during that time, we had treasuries trading at 2.5% return, and people were locking that in. So, that's really put a lot of pressure on the investment portfolios at many banks. Not by any means all banks. I think most institutions were fairly conservative, and a number of them didn't take in that much deposit volume and didn't grow their loan books that much. So, I think there's a fair number of institutions that are faring well as well.
So when you get hired, is it usually banks that are in trouble and you're saying to them, you should have called me 3 months ago?
Well, there's certainly that dimension. Frequently we get brought in after there's a problem, whether it's a regulatory problem or a technology problem, an operational problem. So our task is to get everything fixed, and we do a great deal of that kind of work, working with, we have a kind of a broad range of law firms that we work with, as well as accounting firms, investment banks, and we have a great deal of expertise on our team, and so we're able to ultimately fix most problems that a bank will encounter. There are sometimes those issues buried in the loan portfolio that you really can't resolve, but most of the time we're able to get a favorable resolution.
So we've got a couple minutes left. Stephen, if somebody wants to hire you, what's the onboarding process look like? Do you meet with them face-to-face or on Zoom? How do you know if it's a good fit?
Well, it's usually a pretty quick call, and we will do an initial kind of onboarding discussion and quickly deploy the resources that we need to get a team on the field and working with the client.
Outstanding. You've been a great guest. We're going to leave you with his website, which is enduranceadvisory.com. The great Stephen Crilley. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
You bet. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.